Hey everyone, welcome to BSR Sports Talk on BostonSportsRadio.net. I'm Ashish Sharma with Brian Roach, and we'll be talking Celtics basketball. The Celtics had an emotional victory a couple days ago against the Miami Heat, beating them 100-98 in double overtime. But the big talk of the town is obviously the loss of Rajon Rondo. He suffered a torn ACL in his right knee and is going to end up missing the rest of the season. Brian, how's this going to impact the team moving forward?
It's going to be tough to produce that kind of ball movement without Rondo in the lineup. He was the guy that put the ball right in the hands of like KG, so he could have that deep jumper, people at the basket, like KG at the basket, just dunking over everyone. So, I mean, it's going to be a little different ball movement wise.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, obviously, this is a tough blow. You know, Rajon Rondo is the best player on this team, and they've been struggling this year. It's no doubt. But now that they lose him, it just seems like their road to the playoffs got that much harder. And you know, one thing that was really interesting, Brian, was that the players actually did not know about Rajon Rondo's injury during the game. I don't know if you noticed this, but you know, news apparently started circulating around the third quarter amongst, you know, media members and fans. You know, in this day and age with social media being so big, people started to find out. It filtered through the stadium, through the arena, and Doris Burke actually told Paul Pierce after the game in his post-game interview that Rajon Rondo was going to miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL, and his face pretty much said it all. He winced. And
Yeah, he didn't look too happy about that injury. Like he probably wishes like he doesn't wish that upon anyone on the team basically. So
yeah, and that was exactly what Dwayne Wade said too, which is funny because the Miami Heat knew about it before the Celtics players. I believe Doc knew about it, but you know, the Miami Heat somehow found out about it. I think it might have been Jackie McMullen, who we'll talk about later in this podcast. She actually caught Dwayne Wade as he was exiting the locker room or heading back to the bench and told him about the injury. And obviously, he and Rondo have a bit of a history, and apparently Dwayne Wade was like, no, 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 don't tell me that. That's terrible. You know, Rondo and I have some bad blood, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And then he went back and told his bench, and then James Jones went back and offered something, and he said something along the lines of, you know, that's terrible. I wish Rondo a speedy recovery. That's awful. And yeah, this is obviously something that sends shockwaves throughout the NBA. Rondo is one of the most premier point guards in the league, and this is something like, you know, when Derrick Rose tore his ACL last year, how, you know, teams just kind of feel like they've lost one of their superstars in the league. You know, because he is. I mean, I think he's top 5 in jersey sales, so this is a pretty big deal in the NBA.
yeah, I mean Kobe Bryant actually tweeted like wishing Rondo his healthy recovery and whatnot. So I mean a lot of players have respect for Rondo. They just don't want to play against him because he can pick your pocket, he can defend you, he can now shoot that deep jumper like he did against the Chicago Bulls a couple weeks ago. He made like every single shot he took like from deep. Like even if a whistle was blown during it, he still made it, which was kind of like he was starting to find the rhythm of the jumper, confidence in it. And this injury means he has to start from square one. He has to exercise more and stuff like that. So.
Right, yeah, no, there's no doubt it's going to be a long rehab process. Obviously, in Boston, we've seen our fair share of ACL tears in the last few years. You know, Wes Welker, Tom Brady, now Rajon Rondo. He actually originally injured it, I believe it was against the Hawks in Atlanta, 2 days before their matchup against the Heat in Boston. You were talking to me before the show about a couple of plays that you think may have either caused it or exacerbated the knee injury.
Yeah, it actually was down in Atlanta, I think, the game. Yeah, it was at Atlanta, the game. And in this either the first or second overtime, there was one play where he like hesitated a little bit and tweaked his knee. He came out limping, but Doc Rivers kept him in there. And then like 5-10 minutes later, like towards the end of the first overtime or in the second overtime, he was like going up to shoot it sort of, but he got he hesitated and he like came back down with the ball and he landed awkwardly on his knee. So it was like a double whammy in that game.
Right, and it was a very interesting situation because, you know, most times when you're talking about a torn ACL, players know right away that, like, this isn't right, this is messed up, I'm feeling something really bad in my knee. You saw with Derrick Rose going down in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals last year. You saw it with Wes Welker after he tore up his knee in Houston a few years ago. They knew right away. Rajon Rondo, on the other hand, he walked off the court after the game. He shot around before the game with the Heat. He thought, my knee's a little swollen. It feels, but I think I could go to the. I mean, he was expecting to play in that game. Then he got pulled, and they said, you know what, go get an MRI at the hospital. He really didn't know. And let's talk about the circumstances under which he found out. Jackie McMullen, ESPN Boston, was actually headed back to the locker room before the game as Rajon Rondo was coming back after getting his MRI. And at that point, there was rumors out there that Rajon had torn his ACL. And she said to him, hey, people are saying that you have a torn ACL. And he looked at her and he said, who's saying that? And, then obviously I forget what happened in the rest of the article, but she said something along the lines of, well, you're moving pretty well for a guy with a torn ACL. And he's like, I don't think it's a torn ACL. If I had a torn ACL, could I walk like this? And then she said something like, well, guys have played with a torn ACL before. And it has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to suspect that maybe the severity of this injury isn't as much as we thought. Maybe it's not as much or as severe as, Derrick Rose's injury last year. Maybe it's only a partial tear. Now, let's not fool ourselves. He's done for the season. There's no doubt about that. Once he has surgery, once they set a date and he has surgery, he's gone for the rest of the year. But maybe in terms of his return next year, maybe it's not going to be as late a return as we first thought.
Yeah, there were people saying, I heard yesterday that he could be ready for training camp, and someone even tweeted that he'd be ready in 2 weeks, because that's what Rondo said jokingly, that some people actually said, we're like, oh, wow, he could be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Gary Tangoy of Comcast Sportsnet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes people can be a little ridiculous, like taking the sarcasm to mean something else. Like, you can't read sarcasm in print writing, which is they didn't show Rondo saying that, but he should be back by training camp next season. Be ready for another go as the leading guy on this team. He should be captain by now, but I mean,
no,
we'll
as long as Paul Pierce is on the team, still he won't be the captain. But getting back to that tweet, that's actually a pretty funny story. Sean Grandy actually tweeted that play-by-play for WEI. And apparently Rondo walked over to Cedric Maxwell, who does color, and he said that. He said, I'll be back playing in 2 weeks. And Grandy sent that out, and obviously, to all the smart people in the world who can actually pick up sarcasm, even if it is in print, knew, haha, you know what, that's just Rondo being Rondo. And, I love Gary Tango. He's a good sportscaster on Comcast Sportsnet, but he took it a little literally, and he said, maybe he can be back in 2 weeks. And I was thinking to myself, Gary, come on, man. Come on. No.
Unless he somehow he's going to have the surgery in 2 weeks. So it's kind of like he can't be back in 2 weeks if he's having the surgery in 2 weeks. So
exactly. And once he has the surgery, that itself will make him, out for the rest of the season. So I thought that was pretty hilarious. But it's just kind of funny that Jackie McMullen was the one who told him he had a torn ACL. He came back and he said, I haven't even got my results yet. I mean, how do you guys already know that I have a torn ACL? So it was funny all around how he found out, how Paul Pierce found out. It was just one of those situations where nobody really knew until the results came back. But somehow, sports writers already had an inkling as to the fact that he had a torn ACL.
Well, I mean, that's what everyone expects when someone has a knee injury. Like, it's the worst possible thing, out for the season. He's not coming back. He's gonna have to be like Adrian Peterson, have to be out for a while and then come back. He's gonna be great, or he's gonna be crappy or something like that. So
Adrian Peterson came back and rushed for over 2,000 yards. So hopefully Rondo can do the same thing basketball-wise when he comes back. Hopefully it's just a partial tear.
Whatever that means basketball-wise, 2,000 yards. What does that mean? Maybe he'll be like a 30-point scorer.
Yeah. If Rondo gets 200 assists in 10 games, come on, 20 assists. But let's go back to the impact that this will have on the Celtics. Obviously this is a huge blow. This team, in my opinion, now you and I obviously disagree on this, was going nowhere at the start of the season. It still kind of seems like they're stuck in mud right now. Now that their best player is off the floor for the rest of the year, I think you got to blow this team up. I mean, it just seems like they're not going to make a playoff run. If they somehow cling on to the 8th seed and get into the playoffs, they'll get bounced in the first round by Miami. I mean, let's be honest. Sure, they can ride the emotional wave for a little while, with Rondo being out, losing a star player or something to rally around. But can they do this? I mean, we're not even at the All-Star break yet, I mean, let's be realistic here.
Yeah, I mean, the season's halfway done, basically. It's a little over halfway done. And what I see is, like, basically, they don't have to blow it up. Like, I could see them as a 7th or 8th seed, maybe moving up a little bit, taking this emotional ride a little bit, playing some of the weaker teams. Like, I believe they still have games against the Bobcats, the Wizards. They play the Sacramento Kings this coming week. So, I mean, they got some weak competition. If they play 500, they'll make the playoffs. And if they face Miami, that would be a very good series because there's going to be a lot of emotion in that with Ray Allen and just the Celtics, like, not having Rondo in the playoffs and having to rely on Kevin Garnett, who has stepped up his game these past couple of weeks, even though he's been playing a lot of minutes. And Paul Pierce, he's had a crappy season, to say the least. He has the lowest field goal percentage of his career. Had trouble shooting the three the past couple of weeks. So, I mean, if they can rely on those two and the resurgence of the bench, like Jason Terry and Jeff Green having emotion, that will be what drives the Celtics into the playoffs. It's not like if you blow it up, they're not going to get a good draft pick. They're already decent enough to they'll be not high in the lottery picks and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, no, obviously it's a tricky situation, I mean, there's obviously still hope that they can make the playoffs. I think they're a good enough team to still play good enough ball to get the 8th seed. I mean, just because they lost Rondo doesn't mean. But I'm being realistic. Does this team really give you a chance at winning a title this year? I mean, at the end of the year, do you really see this squad right now without Rondo having a chance to lift, the Larry O'Brien trophy? And no, I'll be honest, no, I don't see it. So I think, for Danny Ainge, obviously it's going to be a little tough, but he's got to do his due diligence, pick up the phone, and see what he can get for Paul Pierce, see what he can get for Kevin Garnett. Now, Kevin Garnett has full no-trade clause, so his situation's a little tricky because I really don't see him waiving that. But Paul Pierce, at this point, still provides some value. I mean, he may not be the guy anymore if he goes to a younger team, but as a second or third option, he still has a hell of a lot of value, even at his age of 35. Now, obviously there's a lot of younger guys like Brandon Bass, Avery Bradley, Courtney Lee, Fab Melo, guys like that. I don't think they're going to trade Sullinger. I think they have high hopes for keeping him around.
Mm-hmm.
But guys like that have a lot more value because of their age, simply. Obviously, maybe not the same talent level, but you got to see what you can move, the parts around to maybe build for the future, whether it's a DeMarcus Cousins or Kyle Lowry's name has been floating out there. There was a rumor that Danny Ainge was looking at a trade that would send Paul Pierce to Memphis for Rudy Gay. That has since been, from what I've heard, dead. That's not happening now. But, it'll be interesting to see how this team goes from here.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I don't think he's going to do too much because, just because Rondo's gone doesn't mean you have to blow everything up because there's always next year. But, I mean, I didn't see them winning it this year anyway because of the way the team was playing. It was just a wishy-washy season anyway. So why blow it up and let it meld a little bit, see what they can do in the playoffs before you actually blow it up.
Right. No, that's your guess is as good as mine. But to be honest, Kevin Garnett is going to be 37 next year. Paul Pierce will be 36 next year. It just seems like the so-called window that we talked about with the big three, has closed, and it seems like it's now been closed for a year. Obviously, it looked like maybe the door was slightly open last year when they got to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final.
They should have won that series, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, no, finally we agree on something. I do think that they should have won that series, but I don't see it. And you know that this team really isn't going to run the table and go far. So you got to at least kick the tires on some trades and see what you can get towards the future. So, if you asked the fan in me, obviously I don't want to see Paul Pierce go, the sentimentality and things like that. But from an objective standpoint, you have to see what you can get for Pierce. You have to see what you can get for Garnett, even though he'll probably decline the no-trade clause. What if you offer Kevin Garnett to a team that's actually playoff bound? All of a sudden, then he might think, you know what, I got 2 years left. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen here in Boston. I love Doc. I love the players that I've played with here. I love this city. But for me, as an aging player that's got 2 years left, regardless of what level I'm playing with, I'm retiring in 2 years, if not sooner than that. Maybe I should go to this team and try to win one more championship. I could see that maybe happening. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think after February 21st, after the trade deadline passes, we're going to see a very different roster, a very different personnel group in Boston.
What I was listening to it on the radio and watching it on TV, the game on Sunday, and they were talking about like when the news broke, that basically like this team of like the like lovable like basically like like favorites were now the underdog because Rondo was out for the year. So maybe like that kind of like since they're the underdog now they're like all the people like Jason Terry, Courtney Lee, Jeff Green who weren't playing well will now like be like, oh, we're the underdogs now. Let's show them what we can do. So
right. No, it's all part of his mental. And, they've had one emotional win since it happened, and it was really as it happened because we found out really during that game. So Danny Ainge has now a few weeks to kind of see what this team can do, how they respond to this. And, like I said, we'll see what happens. But even if they do play well out of the stretch, I don't know if they can sustain that.
yeah.
So anyways, let's switch gears now. I do want to talk about one really interesting story that came out of the Celtics a few games ago. Marv Albert, commentator for, I believe, TNT. He made some pretty strong accusations a few days ago. What did he say? He said the Celtics pumped crowd noise. Who was the opponent? I forget who.
The Knicks.
It was against the Knicks, yeah. And he said that it seemed like they were pumping crowd noise to kind of, raise the level of noise in the stadium. And what do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I went to a game recently, and it was all, like, legit crowd noise. Like, there's no need, like, the Celtics fans, especially, like, if they go to the Garden, they're already pumped up. They don't need extra noise to make it so, like, they're louder than, like, what they were before. Like, I know the Celtics aren't doing as good as they were last year, but like even when they were crushed by the Heat in the playoffs, remember that when they were like "Let's go Celtics" chant just started going out through the whole crowd. Like they didn't have to pump that into the crowd. Like so, right. I don't know.
And I actually I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think it's illegal to do that in the first place. Maybe it is. I don't know. But, I mean, you have a lot of this stuff, coming through the speakers anyways, like, dun, 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 let's go, Celtics. They do that anyways. So what if they just, pound out some, fake crowd? Obviously, it's a little immoral. You don't want to do something like that, and I don't think they do. You've been to a game. I went to a game earlier this year where they played the Suns. I didn't notice anything like that. And I think it's kind of a stupid accusation to make on the air because if you're wrong, all of a sudden now you're the guy that's just making false accusations like that. I mean, the Colts, in a game against the Patriots, I believe, a few years ago on CBS, it might have been Jim Nantz who said, it seems like there's something going on here where the Colts, it wasn't the RCA, it was in the RCA Dome before they moved over to Lucas Oil, where it seemed like they were pumping crowd noise. And even on TV, I remember watching that game and thinking to myself, wow, that sounds a little weird, because it seemed like there was something being looped, and it kind of hit like a glitch, and it was just looping, and I was like, what was that? So, I mean, if you have factual evidence where you can refer to something that happened during the game,
exactly. Yeah.
That happened, what was that? But, then again, we weren't at that game, so we don't know. But it was a little interesting to see Marv Albert say that. But he did back off his comments later on. I don't know if you heard about that. But he said, I may be mistaken or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But getting back to the big picture of the Celtics this year, as we wrap up here on this edition of BSR Sports Talk, Ron, I want your final diagnosis. The Celtics, as you said, will, you think that they'll be able to somehow grab the 8th seed, get into the playoffs. What do you think? How far are they going?
Yeah. I mean, I could see them knocking off like a team that doesn't expect them to do anything. Like, say if they play the Knicks, it'd be a good series. If the Knicks were the number 2 seed, Celtics number 7 seed, or hey, maybe the Knicks overcome the Heat and become the number 1 seed, and it'd be 1-8 Celtics Knicks. That'd be a very good matchup. I love Jeff Green defensively right now. He played LeBron James like perfectly. I think he could play against Carmelo, and Carmelo hasn't done that great against the Celtics recently. So
Well, here's what I think. Yeah, if they get the eighth seed and somehow the Knicks overcome the Heat to become, I think the Heat will finish with the one seed. But let's just say that the Knicks do get the one seed. I think they do match up better against the Knicks. So I think they will beat the Knicks in the first round if they do get the eighth seed. If somehow that happens. But if it's the Heat in the first round, I really don't see them getting by LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh in the first round.
do you see it going
Rondo.
like 7 games, maybe?
I could see it going 6 games. I just don't think it'll go 7. I mean, I just think with the age that this team has, with KG and Pierce. I mean, yeah, they have some good young players. They have some great defense out of Avery Bradley. But again, we aren't taking into account the fact that this team might be very different. We might be talking about Kyle Lowry and not Avery Bradley, or Paul Pierce might.
What if they add Fab Melo, like another rebounding body? I mean, the Heat aren't a good rebounding team. You never know. Like that shot blocker.
That's true. That's one thing that the Celtics desperately need is size. That's one thing that they haven't had ever since they really traded Kendrick Perkins, and I think that's really been their downfall over the last couple of years. But to be honest, I really don't see them. I mean, I would love to see them make a run, obviously, but yeah, I think they won't get swept in the first round. I think they have enough time to avoid that. But I think they will lose in 6 games, probably 4-2 to Miami. If it is the Knicks, then they'll probably beat the Knicks in 7 games. But I think Miami or Chicago somehow, if they match up against them in the playoffs, will be their downfall. So we'll see what happens. It'll be an interesting rest of the year. We shall see. It's been an interesting year. It's been very tumultuous, obviously, but hey, that's pretty much the way it's been throughout Boston for the last year and a half now with the Sox also kind of going through some similar struggles.
And the Patriots.
And the Patriots championship game. So I guess we're kind of getting used to it. But we'll see what happens, and we'll be covering that if anything major happens, obviously any major trade. But yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. He's Brian Roach. I'm Aashish Sharma. This was BSR Sports Talk. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.